Good morning to all. Today the name of the topic is SLA Management in Cloud Computing. SLA stands for Service Level Agreement and the name of the topic is SLA Management in Cloud Computing. Write down the heading SLA Management in Cloud Computing. First of all, start with the topic named as Service Level Objectives. That is known as SLO, Service Level Objective. A service level objective, SLO, is a part of Service Level Agreement that is known as SLA. It's a document that enhances the performance of in between a service provider and the customer. In addition to this, it gives information about the services being purchased, and SLO also a document which that give the consequences if you are not achieving such type of objective. So SLO stands for Service Level Objective. It means you have to set some objectives in your services. If you are not able to achieve such objectives, it means we are lacking somewhere. We have to do some steps, we have to do some precautions why we are failing to achieve such objectives. And there is one term that is called KPIs. K stands for key, P stands for performance, I stands for indicators. So KPI stands for key performance indicator. Next is an SLO contains measurable matrices which are documented and shared between stakeholders in order to provide accountability, produce consistent quality of services known as QoS, and demonstrate continued commitment. So SLO are basically based on the service level indicators that is known as SLI, which are the matrices chosen to be measured. So name of the topic is SLO, means service level objectives. It means we have to set some objectives for the services. If we are not able to achieve such objectives, it means we are lacking somewhere. So instead of lacking in your organization, you have to do something better for your services. So in this, we have to follow some service level agreement, and this is the agreement that is in between service provider, that is a cloud service provider, and the customer of the services and user of services. Next is SLO, that is known as Service Level Objective. It is useful for the business leaders to define internal goals for maintaining the consistent service levels, and helps to avoid the disputes, means problems, disturbances around the expectations between the service provider and the end user. Let us suppose I'm giving a cloud services and you are the customer of it may be a service, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. If I'm not able to give you a services what you are expecting, it means you will not continue my services. So you have to maintain the relationship, you have to maintain the level of your services in a good manner between a cloud level service provider and the customer or the user of the services. Common examples of matrices that can be associated with service level objective are disaster recovery time, application availability, live communication response time, first call resolution rate, and application maintenance. These are some of the matrices that we have to follow in case of SLO. Means it have a good disaster recovery time, means we can get from the disaster as soon as possible. Next is application should be available 24/7, and it have a good live communication response time, first call resolution rate, and we have a good application maintenance. Next is how SLO work. It means how the service level object work. First of all, while the end goal of defining the effective of SLO is to deliver reliable services to the end user. So first option is to provide a good services, provide a reliable services to the end users. The cost and complexity of getting closer to 100% reliability increase exponentially. So let us suppose we are doing some business, we are doing marketing, any business we are doing, it's very tough to achieve 100% reliability. So if we are following SLO, that is called service level objective, then we can able to set some objectives so that we can do good in our business to achieve such objectives. If we are not able to achieving such objectives, it means we are lacking somewhere. We have to do the work hard for these weaknesses. Next is that every component of the cloud service causes different impact on the service performance. If we are using platform as a service, it has different impact. If we are using infrastructure as a service, it has different working. If we are using software as a service, it has different working and performance. So every component of the cloud service have different impact on the services. So you have to choose the services according to your requirement, according to your business, whether you want to go for a service as a software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service. Next is SLO analysis involves. First is aggregating, means combining the service level indicator performance over the long time. If we are using services for a 6 month, for a 1 year, for a 2 days, we have to combine all the time period to check the performance. Comparing the result with the numerical target for the system availability. So we have to set some value. It may be a negative, it may be a positive. Let us suppose that I have set a value 50%. If I'm achieving 50% in my services, it means I'm going good. But if I'm able to achieve only 22, let us suppose 23%, it means I'm lacking in my services. I have to do some work for this. So first is you have to aggregate, mean you have to combine the services to check for its performance. You have to set some numerical value. If you are able to achieve such value, it means we are going good. And if we are not able to achieve such target, it means we are lacking over there. Next is approaches to SLO. So we have two approaches for SLO: product-centric approach, engineering-centric approach. So we have two approaches to SLO management. One is product-centric approach, second is engineering-centric approach. So approaches of SLO is broadly divided into two categories. One is product-centric approach and second is engineering-centric approach. So start with the first approach, that is product-centric approach. Some companies start by defining user journeys and formulating the SLO accordingly, whereas others start with the matrices and hypothesize user's journey later to improve and refine an existing SLO. So every company have their strategy to start up the business. So define user journey with the product team. So first is define user journey with the product team. Second is identify the key services that are on the user journey and select best SLI. SLI stands for service level indicator. First, we have to define the user journey with the product. Second, we have to check or identify or find out the key services, and we have to select the best SLI. SLI stands for service level indicator. Once we have selected the best SLI, then we have to define such SLI. Then we have to define SLO. SLO stands for service level objective. Then we have to create an error budget policy. Then we have to monitor and report on the SLO, service level objectives. Then we have to reevaluate the SLO and make changes as needed. So these are some of the steps that we have to follow in case of product-centric approach. It means we have to focus on the product, the selection of the product, and the relationship of the customer with the product. Let us suppose that we are providing three services: software as a service, platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. Let us suppose most of the people want to access the service infrastructure as a service. So I have to check which services is most chosen by the people and liked by the people. Then we have to select best SLI, that is called service level indicator. Then we have to define the SLO, service level objective. We have to set the objectives of the service. That for this we have to work. Then we have to create error budget policy. Then we have to continuously check and report on the SLO. If we are achieving such objectives, it means we are going good in the business. If we are not achieving, then we have to take some steps, and we have to reevaluate SLO again and again until we get the success for which we are doing the business. Next is engineering-centric approach. This is the second approach that we have to follow. In this case, we have to define SLI, that is service level indicator. Then we have to define the SLO, service level objective. Then we have to monitor and report, that is based on SLO, service level objective. So either maybe a product-centric approach or it may be an engineering-centric approach. We have to define the SLI and we have to define the SLO. We have to check for the SLO again and again until we get the success. Many companies start with the second approach and encounter difficulties with wider adoptions. So error budget policy are crucial as they make the SLO actionable. So budget is one of the backbone of any organization. So when we go for error budget policies, it's not an easy task. We also advise team to circle back to the product and outline the critical user journeys. So these are two ways through which we can design. Either we can go for a product-centric approach or we can go for an engineering-centric approach. Next is SLA, service level agreement. Write down the heading named as SLA, service level agreement. As it's clear from name, it's an agreement, it is a commitment between a service provider and a client. Client may be a customer, may be a user. So SLA, that is known as service level agreement. It is the commitment, it is the agreement between a service provider and a client. So its main characteristics are quality, availability, responsibilities that are agreed upon between the service provider and service user. So these are the three main factors that should be ensured in between the service provider and a client. Quality, we always expecting a good quality services. Availability means we are expecting services should be available 24/7. Responsibility means it should be responsible. The service provider should be responsible. In case of any failure, in case of any disaster, he or she should be responsible to recover. Now SLA define the matrices that are used to measure the level of services provider. So it's clear from its name, it's a service level agreement. First it check what type of services are provided by the service provider. It means it check the level of services. It is a micro level services, it is a small level services, it is a medium level services, or it is a high level services. Remedies or penalties resulting from failure to meet the promised service level expectations. It means if we are unable to achieve the level of the services that are promised by the service provider, then he or she should have to pay some penalties or in the form of fine. The most common component of SLA is that the service should be provided to the customer as agreed upon in the contract. So what we have signed in the contract, you have to pay the services in a such manner. If service provider is not able to provide services that he or she should sign in a contract, he have to pay for the penalties. It is the critical component of any technology vendor contract. For example, internet service provider will commonly include service level agreements within the terms of their contract with customers to define the level of service being sold in a plain language terms. Usually, SLA are between companies and external suppliers. but they may also be between two departments within a company. So it may be in between companies and external suppliers, or it may be in between the two departments within a company. So it means that when we let us suppose I'm a service provider, and I have some signed some contract or agreement with the client, but I'm not able to provide such services that I have signed in my client, then I have to pay for the penalties for this. In this case, the SLA will be typically have a technical definition. Write down the heading MTBF. MTBF. M stands for mean, MEAN, mean. T stands for time. B stands for between. F stands for failures. MTBF, it is well-known term in operating system. MTBF, mean time between failures. And second term is MTTR. MTTR. M stands for mean. First T stands for time. Second T stands for to. R stands for recovery. So first we have a mean time between failure. Next we have a mean time to recovery. Mean time between failure means the time when we got failed. Mean time to recover means how much time this software or any specific application will take to recover. These are the very, very important terms of an operating system: mean time to recover and mean time between failures. Identifying which party is responsible for reporting faults or paying fees, responsibilities for various data rates, throughput. So in this case, we have some technical definitions of mean time between failure, mean time to recover from the failures, who is responsible, to whom we have to give the report of faults or failures, and then how much throughput we are getting. Throughput means the level of output. Next term, we have a jitter. Jitter is very important term in a computer network. It means the delay during the transfer of the data. It's very, very important term of computer network, jitter. It means how much delay we get during the transfer of data. The reason for the delay is that it may be a network congestion, it may be a collisions, it may be a signal interfaces. These may be the reasons for delay in the traffic. So in SLA, we have to know about the mean time between failure, means the time when we got the fault or failure. Time to recover means how much time we take to recover. To whom we have to report for the faults, failures, problems, how much fees we have to pay, what is the data rate, what is the throughput. Then what about jitter means how much delay we get when we are transferring the data. Reasons of delay may be a network congestion. Network congestion means more traffic on the network. Collisions means 2 or 3 processes want to access the same network area, and signal interfaces. Next heading, service level agreement includes. First, it provides detailed service overview. First is, it provides detailed service overview. It provides the overview of services in a very detailed manner, because it's completely regarding, or it's completely for services. Next, speed of service delivery, at which speed the services are delivered by the service providers or cloud services provider. Next is plan for performance monitoring. Plan for performance monitoring. It means what plan we have to follow for checking the performance of the services. Next is description of reporting procedure. Detailed explanation of reporting procedure means what procedure we follow for reports. Next is list of penalties that will be applied in case of agreement violations. List of penalties that will be applied in case of agreement violation. It means if the service level provider or if the cloud service provider not able to provide the services that he or she signed in a contract, what penalties he or she have to pay. And the last is constraints. We have a different types of constraints. So it provided detailed description about the constraints. So instead of its definition, it have a service overview, speed of service delivery, plan for performance monitoring, description of reporting procedure, list of penalties that should have to pay by the customer, cloud service provider, and the last is constraints. Constraints means restrictions. Next heading is types of SLA. Types of SLA means types of service level agreement. We have a three types of service level agreement. We have a three types of service level agreement. First is customer based SLA. Second is service based SLA. And the last is multi-level SLA. So three types of SLA. One is customer based SLA. Second is service based SLA. And the last is multi-level SLA. Multi-level SLA is again divided into three categories. Multi-level SLA is divided into three parts. First is corporate level. Corporate level. Second is customer level. And the last is service level. So multi-level SLA again divided into three categories: corporate level, customer level, and the last is service level. Multi-level means combination of more than one services. So it is again combination of corporate, customer plus services level. So some of the SLA for a individual or some maybe for a groups of customers. So it's depend upon the requirement of the company. So we have to choose any type of SLA very wisely. First is customer based SLA. It means it's completely depend upon customers. This type of agreement is basically for individual customers and comprises all the relevant services that a client may need while leveraging only one contract. It means it's from customer to customer. It's completely depend upon a single customer. It's completely depend upon one contract, not for the group of customers, not for the group of organizations. It's only for a single customer. It contains details regarding the type and quality of the service that has been agreed upon. So it gives detail which type of service and what is the quality of the service that we are providing. For example, telecommunication service include voice calls, messaging, internet services, but all exist under a single contract. If we are signing the contract of telecommunication service, we get various facilities in a telecommunication services, like we get voice calls, we get messaging, we get internet services, but they have all comes under the category of single contract. Let us pose an example of WhatsApp. It's normal a single word, but we are able to send a voice messages. We are able to do a video call, voice call. We can even send a text files. So it means we getting multiple services, but under the single contract named as a WhatsApp. Same like Facebook, same like Instagram, same like Twitter. Next is service-based SLA. Second category of SLA is a service-based SLA. Now it's depend upon the services. This SLA is a contract that includes one identical type of service for all of its customer. Let us suppose we have a 10 customer, but the level or the type of the service should be same for all customers. Because the service is limited to one unchanging standard, it is more straightforward and convenient for the vendors. For example, using a service-based agreement regarding an IT help desk would mean that same service is valid for all end users that sign the service-based SLA. No matter 100 customers are there, no matter 1 lakh customers are there, no matter 10 customers are there, service for all the customers are same. Let us pose an example of WhatsApp. Millions and billions of people are using WhatsApp. Service for all the customers are same. It does not mean we are using the WhatsApp in India, we are getting different features, and someone is using in America or in Australia, they have different features of WhatsApp. No, WhatsApp features, they are common for everyone, no matter from which country we belong, no matter how many the customers are using such service. Next is multi-level service. The third category of SLA is multi-level SLA. This agreement is customized according to the needs of end user company. Now it's completely depend upon the company requirement. It allows the users to combine several conditions into same system to create a more convenient service. So we can combine multiple services into a single system. Its first is corporate level. This type of SLA does not require frequent updates since its issues are typically unchanging. It includes comprehensive discussion of all the relevant aspects of agreement and applies to all the customer in the end user organization. Basically, in this type of level, we just need to focus on the discussions. We have to do working for resolving the issues. It does not require frequent update. Second type of level is customer level. It's completely related to customer. So for example, when an organization requests that security level in one of its department, in this situation, the entire company is secured by one security agency, but required that one of its customer is more secure for a specific reason. So let us suppose I just want to get a password for one computer. It's not true. For example, I just want to get a firewall for my lab. It does not mean it should be imposed only on a one computer system. It should be designed for whole laboratory. But if I face specific problem on a single computer, I have to give more security to that computer. But does not mean the rest of the lab should be unsecure. We have to give the security to all the systems. But if one system have a specific or a special problem, we have to put more focus on that. The last is service level. In this agreement, all aspects attributed to the particular service regarding a customer group are included. It's basically regarding the service. We have to put more focus on this, on the basis of services, not on the customer. What type of services we are providing, what is the level of the services, and what is the quality of service. Both are same, service based or a service level, because both are dealing with the services only. Next heading is component of SLA. First, document overview. First component is document overview. Second is strategic goals. Third is description of services. Next is exclusions. Next is service performance. These are the components of SLA. Now start with the first component, that is document overview. This first section set for the basis of agreement. It includes parties involved, means name of the service provider and name of the client, start date, when we start the agreement, basic introductions of services, means number of services, level of services, quality of service. So document overview means we have to design one PDF, one Word document in the and in that document we have the complete detailed information regarding the service provider and the client of the services, start date of the services, basic introduction about the services, level of the services, type of the services, and working of the services. Next is strategic goals. Description of agreed purpose and objectives. Again, SLO, service level objectives. In this, we have to set the objectives, and we have to know either we are able to achieve such objectives or we are lacking of achieving such objectives. Next is description of services. Now in this we have to describe the services, name of the services, type of the services, performance of the services, and working of various services. Next we have exclusions. Specific services that are not offered should also be clearly defined to avoid the confusions and eliminate room for assumptions from other parties. We have to set it clear for the client what types of services we are providing and what type of services we are not providing in order to avoid any type of confusion. Next is service performance. In this case, we have to check for the performance of the services. So client and service provider should agree on the list of all the matrices they will use to measure the provider service levels. So these are the components. First, document overview that give the detailed information about the service provider and the client of services, date of start date of agreement, and the basic introduction about the services. In second, we have to set some goals that comes under the category of SLO. Then we have to define the services, number of services, name of services, level of services, working of services. Then we have to do exclusions. Exclusions means what services we are excluding in from the agreement or what services we are including into the agreement. The last is service performance. It means the performance of the services. We have to measure such performance of the services. Means we have to do some analysis. We need to use some monitors that can monitor the services performance. So these are the components of service level agreement. And the next component of SLA is stakeholders. Write down the next component, that is stakeholders. It defines the parties, persons that are involved in the agreement and establish their responsibility. Stakeholder means cloud service provider and the client. So it defines how many parties and who are involved in agreement and establish or define their responsibilities. Next is security. All the security measures that the service provider will take are defined. Typically, this includes the drafting and consensus on anti-poaching, IT securities, non-disclosure agreements. It's completely deal with the security of the agreement between the client and the cloud service provider. Next is risk management and disaster recovery. Risk management process and disaster recovery plan are established and communicated. Means in between a cloud service provider and in between client, risk management plans and disaster recovery plans are discussed and established. Means they have to have some little overview if they got a risk, how to manage it, and if there will be any chances of disaster and how to recover from any disaster. Next is service tracking and reporting. It means it defines the reporting structure, it defines the tracking intervals and stakeholders involved in the agreement. So it's completely regarding how can we track the services and it's about the reporting. Next is periodic review and change processes. We have to check for the key performance indicators after maybe 1 month, after 14 days, after 2 months, or maybe on a regular basis. And if we found any problem or any updation, we just need to go for this. Next is termination process. The SLA should define the circumstances under which the agreement can be terminated or will expire. We have two conditions. Let us suppose I'm a cloud service provider and I have one client. I can terminate it or even it got expired. Both are different. Expiry is different from termination. Termination means now the client is not satisfied with the cloud services provided by me. He or she can terminate the services before the expiry. Second is that expired. It means now the session got expired. So the notice period from either side should also be established. Finally, all the stakeholders and authorized participants from both parties must sign the document to approve every detail and process from client side and from vendor side. From cloud service provider, one person from both parties have to sign that document so that they can approve all the details and processes. Next heading we have, that is cloud SLA lifecycle, cloud service level agreement lifecycle. So in life cycle of SLA, we have acquisitions, operations, terminations. So we will discuss all the phases of life cycle in a detail. First is acquisitions. It means to acquire something, to get some services. This is the phase 1 of the cloud services life cycle. A prospective cloud customer can use the services that is offered by the cloud service provider to check whether it meets his or her requirement. For example, security, personal data protections, performance, etc. And see how one offering compares with another in the market. So let us suppose I just want to purchase a services like infrastructure as a service, and there are two companies in the market that are providing both services. I will go to, let us suppose I will go to Google. I will check all this infrastructure as a service of Google. I will check whether it's meeting my requirement or not. Then again, I will check the same service on Microsoft Azure. Then I will see the level of the infrastructure as a service of Microsoft Azure, and then I will compare both services. Then I will compare the services of both companies. One is of Google and second is of Microsoft Azure. Then I will select which one is best, Google or Microsoft Azure. Which company services are meeting with my requirement. So I have to choose according to this. So in that case, we can go for more than one companies for a same service. We have to make the comparison. We have to check for the services of different companies. We need to check whether they are meeting our requirements or not. Then we go for such company whose services are according to my requirements. Next is assessment. Any relationship start with pre-assessing what one would like, why, when, and with whom. So these are the assumptions, assessments. So does the first cloud SLA lifecycle phase assessment. Assessment means, let us suppose that I'm a cloud service provider and I have some clients. So assessment means we have some assumptions. As a client, you have some assumptions from a vendor side. As a vendor, I have some assumptions from a client side. So life cycle of SLA contain assessment. We have to do some assessment. What let us suppose, being a client, I have some assessment like what types of services are provided by vendor, what will be the level of the services, what will be the quality of the services, and what level of security provided by the vendor. So these are some of the assessments. Next is preparation. This second cloud SLA lifecycle phase includes, for instance, the first contact and conversation with possible CSPs, further assessment, pre-evaluations, fine-tuning, goals and assumptions. Now it means we have to prepare. I have to do some pre-evaluations. I have to do some assessments. Fine-tuning means we have to check for the hardware and software configurations. So preparation means we have to prepare roughly for some of we have to do some evaluations. We have to do some assessments. We have to do some tuning. We have to do some assumptions. Next is negotiation and contracting. This phase can include preparing for negotiation. Negotiation means we are able to, yes, we are able to do something so that we can get best services in our favor, negotiation. So in this case, we have to do some negotiation regarding the contract. And in this case, we have to check for some assessments. We have to follow the evaluations, we have to follow the tuning, and we have to do some negotiations. We need to check for the needs, goals, assumptions. They all are interrelated with each other. So in this phase, we have to prepare for negotiation. How can we do the negotiating? These all comes under the first phase, that is called acquisition. Acquisition has three parts. Assessment. Assessment means we have to do some assessment like level of the services, what type of security of services we get, all these. Preparation means we have to prepare for some evaluations, some assessments. The last is negotiation and contracting. How can we negotiate the contractor? How can we negotiate the cloud service provider regarding the contract? Second phase is operation. This phase determines whether a cloud service meet the committed service level objectives during the provisioning of the cloud services. Now this phase check the level, is the services able to meet with the service level objectives or not. So in this case, we have to check for the objectives or the level of the objectives of the services. It has execution and operations. Execution and operations. This phase include actual start of setting up the cloud services. Now in a real manner or in a reality, we are going to set up the cloud services. Now we start populating the cloud services with the relevant data, onboardings, on training users. Now we are starting the communication channels. So in this case, we give real implementation to the cloud services. I start my cloud services. I start promoting my cloud services. I start promoting it onboardings on it, and I start training the people. I start up the communication channel. Everything now start in the reality. Next is updates and amendments. Now in this case, if any type of request arises or any failure arises or any fault arises or any type of amendment we feel, we can do the updations and amendment in this phase. The last is escalations. This phase deals with contractual or other non-compliance breaches and other incidents during the term of ongoing cloud service agreements that have resulted in dispute that needs escalations, means negotiations, resolutions. In this case, if you feel any type of we have a problem of data theft, we have a problem of data breaches, then in this case we have to resolve such problems, we have to recover such problems. So all these three steps comes under the second phase, that is operations. Next phase is termination. Termination have termination and consequences of termination. Now, if I'm going to terminate the services or agreement, I have to give about the consequences, means I have to give the reasons, because we are talking about agreement. So if you are terminating your agreement before the expiry date, you have to explain the reason for this termination. But if we are not terminating, simply the agreement got expired, we can extend it or renew it. Yes, consequences means results, outcomes. If you feel consequences are favorable, then we can even go for or continue with the same services or with the same vendor. But if you feel the result, the outcome of your services is not good, then you can move to some other vendor. This phase deals with the end of relationship between CSPs and CSs, means the services provider or the services users, including the end of the legal relationship, even though the later will generally continue for several years after the termination as per mandatory laws and legislations. This last phase, for instance, include the assessment of alternatives. If I am terminating my relationship of services with one vendor, then I have to check for some alternatives. settlement and termination arrangements, then data export. Let us suppose first I'm working on infrastructure as a service. My whole data is on IaaS. Now I want to terminate with infrastructure as a service and I want to go for a platform as a service. First I need to export data from IaaS to PaaS. So this is about terminations and consequences of termination. Means if I got terminated, what the result, what the outcome I have to bear for. Next is service level agreement in cloud. Service level agreement is the bond for performance negotiated between the cloud service provider and a client. It's completely a level of agreement between the service provider and the service users. Earlier in cloud computing, all the service level agreements were negotiated between client and the service consumers. Already there is a negotiation between the service provider and the user of services. So most service level agreement are standardized until a client become a large consumer of the cloud services. Nowadays, we have a standardized level of service level agreement between the provider of the services and the user of the services. We have basically two major service level agreement. First is Windows Azure SLA. Second, we have a SQL Azure SLA. First is Windows Azure SLA, service level agreement. Now we are talking about Windows Azure SLA. It means Windows Azure has different SLA for compute and storage. For compute, there is a guarantee that when a client deploys 2 or more role instance in a separate fault and upgrade domains, client's internet facing roles will have external connectivity minimum 99.95% of the time. So it has different rules. If we go for a compute, we have some other factors. If we go for a storage, we have some other factors. So one option we have that is called Windows Azure SLA, and second what we have a SQL, structured query language Azure SLA. SQL query language, that is called structured query language. Azure client have connectivity between database and internet gateway of the SQL Azure. SQL we also known as, it is the database language. It is basically basically used for connecting your front end with your back end. So SQL Azure will handle monthly availability of 99.9% within a month. So in this case, the time is measured in some interval of minutes in a 30-day monthly cycle. In that case, availability is always be remunerated for a complete month. So a portion of time is marked as unavailable if the customer attempt to connect to the database are denied by SQL Azure gateway. So if for some specific time of for specific time or for a specific portion of time, if customer is not able to connect with the database, then such time will be marked as unavailable. So we have a Windows Azure SLA. It is used for both compute, means for doing some computing and for storing the data, and this is used for a database connectivity. Next, we have a automated policy based management. It means we have to do management that is on the basis of policies, automation policies or automated policies. Policy based automation focus on separating your business and operational policies from mechanism of actually performing the automation according to the policies. So policy based automation basically focus on setting your policies and automation controls that dealing with your implementing. So in that case, we have to manage the business, we have to manage the cloud services, but these services are completely depend upon your policies, and that policies are automated policies. So in automation control, policy based automation include resource information. What type of resources we have? Groups of resources, means from where we are getting the resources, groups of resources. Relationship in the decision making process, We have to check the relationship in a decision making process. So resource information include a resource class, name of the resources, how to start the resources, how to stop the resources, how to monitor the resources, or resources can be a member of system-wide groups and relationship. So resource name, class, when to start, when to stop, when to monitor, all the information should be provided in this. Next, we have a power of policy. You are able to define the automation requirement easily. So it's easier, very easiest to define the automation requirements. In a policy, you can define which resources belong together and are managed as one. Means we have to check for what type of resources which we have, how they are connected with each other. For example, DB2R system consists of many resources. So with automation control, we can group and aggregate the resources in a single unit. You can monitor on this level, issue commands on this level, and we can manage at the business level. So in policies, we have to specify how resources are dependent and related to each other. We need to know about the dependency of resources and how they are connected with each other. For example, which of the other resources must be available before a certain resource can be started. In other example, my database must be up and running before my application is started. It means we just need to how the resources are dependent with each other, and as we have already studied in database dependency, we have a different levels of dependency, so we can see over the dependencies. Policy definitions can be reused, can be copied, can be cloned for a similar applications elsewhere in the enterprise. We just need to define the policies only once. We can use it again and again in the enterprise instead of writing the same policies again. Because the underlying technology is responsible for the detailed actions, these actions are performed in a consistent and reliable manners. So if we start the talk about the traditional programming solutions, they are not so good because we have to check for the abnormal conditions, and they are most of cases they are incomplete. So when we start with the automation of policies, we can even do some critical actions. We can complete some critical tasks in a very good manner. Some sample add-on policies include automation module for base operating systems. We have a major middleware, system management software. So these are some of the sample policies. Another possibilities to populate your policy is by using the auto discovery functions. If you use this method, the data of all your address spaces that include Unix system services are gathered on your system. So we have different options. We can go for a auto discovery function. It means it automatically discover the data, or it automatically discover if the data if you give the address space. Go to the address, then check for the data. Next is policy refinement. Refinement means we can do some updations, we can do amendment in the policies that are not suiting to the organization. So policy refinement means we can policy refinement, also known as policy amendment or policy updation. So policy-based management systems should facilitate the definition of high-level administrative goals, which are easy for humans to express and understand, enable their translation into low-level policies, and map them into commands that configure the managed device accordingly. So basically the policies that we are implementing in the organization, they are very down to the normal people. They are translated into a lower level policies, and we convert them into the commands, and that commands are configured and managed very easily. Policy refinement is the process of transforming high level goal or abstract policy specifications into low level concrete policies that can be enforced on the managed system. So it means we can simply translate high level goals into low level goals. Main tasks are it to determine the resources, that are needed to satisfy the requirement of policy. It means it define what types of resources we need if we just want to satisfy the requirement of the policy. It translate high level goals into operational policies that system can enforce. It means all the high level policies are converted into low level policies for better management and understanding. It verifies that low level policies meet the requirements specified by the high level policy. It does not mean we are converting the high level policies into low level policies. It means we are degrading its performance. No. All your low level policies are capable enough to meet with the requirement that are specified by a high level goal. The last is several policy refinement approaches has been developed. Most are linear temporal logics, event calculus, and utility computing. These are some of the examples of policy refinement approaches. So policy refinement means we can translate the high level policies into low level policies for better management and for better understanding. So we have different types of approaches for a policy refinement. We have a linear temporal, we have a event calculus, and utility computing. That was all about policy refinement. Thank you so much, class.